Plastics are an amazing resource and structural support pillar of modern society. They provide us with safe ways to preserve and transport food, more sterile and safe medical equipment, cheap clothes, toys, hardware, technology, really just anything and everything. But there's a downside to this. Plastic is in many ways an ideal material for preserving foods because it does not deteriorate easily. However, because almost all plastic is single-use, or at least treated like it's a single-use thing, most plastic gets used for a little bit of its life cycle and then just sits. This is bad, and we are seeing both obvious effects of this, like the trash islands of the Pacific, and less obvious but more upsetting ones, like microplastics, which likely do something to the body that we just haven't figured out yet. Anyway, this is bad, as I just said, and as such, recycling plastic is appealing. It mitigates both the cost of making plastic and leaving it to, well, not rot, but something akin to that, just polluting our environment. There are many different types of plastic recycling that have been proposed or developed, so we're going to discuss an industry favorite of the moment, pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is the burning material, but in this case plastic, without any oxygen present. And under these conditions, the plastic mostly breaks down into liquid oil, which is often seen as comparable to crude oil, and thus allows for recycling at a more base level. Around 8% of all crude oil is used in the production of plastic, so if around a quarter of all plastic were to undergo pyrolysis, which is admittedly a pretty high estimate, then 2% less crude oil must be extracted from the earth to keep the status quo. This may not seem like much, however, that 2% of all crude oil could be used to continue to make new plastics. And the more pyrolysis infrastructure has been built, the less dependent plastic will be on fracking and other methods of obtaining oil, which would in turn create less demand for oil. In addition, some bioplastics can undergo pyrolysis to produce crude oil, such as PEF plastic, a possible alternative to PET plastic. This is not to say that pyrolysis is a perfect system, however, as not only would it require consistent 500 to 550 degrees Celsius heats, which consumes a fair amount of energy, it also emits pollutants such as carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and hydrochloric acid, which likely offsets the benefits of not having to take oil from the earth itself. Granted, emissions such as these are a problem inherent in most forms of plastic chemical recycling. So is pyrolysis a net good or bad thing in the end? I myself am not certain on the issue yet, however it feels like forward action is better than continuing to dump plastic in a landfill, and as such, pyrolysis as infrastructure should be developed in conjunction with other methods of chemical recycling which seem at least somewhat environmentally friendly. I'm not an expert myself in chemical recycling. At the moment, I'm mostly a hobbyist who has thought about plastic pollution for just a little too much to not want to devote myself to becoming a material chemist or environmental chemist so that I can help do something with this problem. In the end, the main thing that you can do on all this is remember the 3 R's, not just the recycling part, but reducing and reusing your waste as well. Peace.